Testing, 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 testing. Hello. Yeah. Hi guys, can you hear me? Is it working? Okay, great. Welcome everyone. We're so excited to have you all here. We're the UCT Politics Society Executive. I'm Brittany, I'm the chairperson, and we're really excited to be hosting you at our Red Table Talk event. If you know, the theme is discourse of power in politicized spaces. So we really want the audience to also engage, ask questions. This is your time really to also feel like you can have a platform where you're allowed to also influence how those dynamics are, especially with such esteemed guests who will surely also introduce themselves. But yeah, so I'm Brittany. Maybe a little thing about me is I'm a politics and law student, second year, and yeah, that's me.
Hi everybody, I'm Candace. I'm the vice chair. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. The turnout is insane. Like, whoa. Yeah. I'm super excited for you guys to kind of engage. Please do feel free to speak and engage. That's what we're here for, you know? We're so passionate about fostering conversation in political spaces, and we really wanted to create a space that students can do that, because we noticed that there wasn't one. So please feel very welcome. Grab some tea, coffee, and yeah, welcome. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, I'm Zach. I do the PR here. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I don't have a whole spiel to say, but yeah, hi, thank you so much for coming.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm tapping into the mic. Hi everyone, my name is Oke. I'm head of events for the Politics Society. A bit about me, I'm doing politics, law, and gender studies. So obviously, naturally, like all of my exec team, we're incredibly passionate about making political spaces less gate-kept and kind of making or opening up a space for us to all have discourse across different levels of knowledge and across
Students. I also take sociology, and I am the executive secretary for the Politics Society. And pretty much the same sentiment that has already been stated. We're very passionate about what we're doing here, and we're so excited to have you. So thank you all so much for coming, and we hope you have fun.
Hello everyone, how are you? Big dubs, thank you so much for coming. Like, you don't understand the amount of stress we had before everything, but my name is Tadiwa. I'm the inclusion officer of the Politics Society. I'm gonna be your host as well, so I'm gonna be talking a lot tonight. Don't get bored of me, please. Yeah, I'm a second year doing law and politics. I'm very passionate about politics, I must say, and I think that's what partly inspired this whole thing, this whole desire to open up the space and basically have everyone included, you feel me? So we just want more interaction. Feel free, like it's a safe space. Don't be shy at all, for sure.
Last one, guys. My name is Bashira. I'm the treasurer. I love to talk, and I'd love to give you the spiel that we offered to the panel about how important it is to have platforms like this and how we found each other in Intro to Politics. What a stunning story, guys. But I'll end it there. Thank you for coming and welcome. Please sign the register if you haven't. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's begin. Please make sure that when you are contributing your ideas, make sure to be considerate of others and be kind, you know? Because I know politics can be very charged, but please remember to be kind and considerate. So yeah, let's begin.
Thanks guys, let's begin.
All right, you guys already know that this is a red table talk. Is anyone familiar with a red table talk? Or we kind of know what it is. For those who don't, a red table talk is this new thing that was inspired by Jada Pinkett and her I think stepmom and daughter, where they basically sit on a red table and they talk about contemporary, hot, pressing matters in the world. It can be anything as wild as politics to anything as menial even as doing chores, right? And I guess what we're doing today, we took that concept, sorry Jada, and then we introduced our amazing panelists for the night. We have lecturers, we have postgrad students, we have political commentators, and they're all going to contribute into sharing their ideas and helping us walk through this night just to get an understanding of what's going on. So I'm not going to talk too much for now. They're going to explain themselves and tell you who they are, starting from that side of the table. Have fun.
There we go. Sorry. Good evening, everybody. My name is Vinithan Naidu. I'm a lecturer in public administration in the political science department, studies department.
Hi everyone, I'm Yonela Tosh Mlambo. I'm a PhD candidate in the Center for African Studies.
Hello everyone, my name is Olivia Stock. I am a postgrad LLB student and I'm also a student photojournalist.
Hi everyone, so Dugan, and I'm a master's student specializing in justice and transformation.
Hi everyone, my name is Laika and I am an honors student currently working in political studies.
Hi everyone, I'm Leah. I'm most of you guys' TA. And I'm also doing my master's in political studies.
Hi everyone, I'm Stacia Solomons. I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Political Studies and I'm also working as a junior research fellow on a project documenting transitional justice on the African continent.
Alright, so everyone can see that we have even spread here, right? Like, everyone here has something to contribute. Everyone here is special, important, and we love them. And we felt like it was necessary to bring a very spread out, what you call it, table in a way. Because you can see from that side, we have Prof. Naidu, who's actually my professor, who specializes in public administration, right? And the intersection with politics and how it works in an equal bubble, basically. And then all the way that side, we're talking about our moral support from first year, the person who held us through first year, Leah, right? Who's talking about media and the intersection with politics. So it's an even spread. And how we're going to delve into it is going to be fun. What we're going to do, it's like we're going to pop up a theme, right? We're going to talk about the theme. We're going to share some ideas about the theme. Anyone can contribute on the tables. Feel free to interject whenever you interject, and feel free to disagree, especially. And then at specific times, you guys are going to get a chance to question us, to ask us questions, to bother us, and to even disagree with whatever we have to say. So if you have a pen and a paper, this is your time to like take note, because it's going to get fun soon. Right? Sorry, I think I'm... Something's wrong with me. Is it okay? Alright, cool, don't worry. Before I go anywhere, actually, let me ask some icebreakers. Let's get loose. I'm only going to ask three, quite a lot, but I'm going to ask three weird questions, and I'm going to pick who I'm going to ask. So you're all in trouble here. Firstly, Leah. Yeah. What was the last lie you told? And would you tell it again if you're given the chance?
Yes. The last lie I told was, yes, Prof, I'll get you those chapters on Monday. So I will tell them again.
All right, sorry for those professors. Professor Vinithan Naidu, sorry. If you were president of South Africa for just one day, and you could make any change across the board, in any ministry, in any policy, anything you want, what would it be?
Take Get a bit more sleep. More sleep.
Oh.
No, just joking. Just joking. Gosh. Do you know? You never ask an academic. Direct question. Did I do that? No.
Am I the problem? It's the speakers. Might do without.
No, seriously. No, it's an important question. For one day. Well. If I had the power to expedite decisions, force decisions to be taken more quickly, at the threat of the ability to terminate everybody who worked in government, then and it would be effective. I would do that. So I would say get millions of people that work in government. Everybody's got something on any given day. Get it done. Don't drag your feet because somebody's lives will depend on whether you get this thing done. And if you can't get it done, we get rid of you. I know it's a fanciful idea. But I think kind of the moral I suppose core of the idea is that government is this huge slowly rolling vehicle which space. I mean, gosh. I look. I mean, politics is about ideas which ultimately translate into something concrete, which ought to be for the collective good. So I suppose you could say there's a certain criteria which need to be met, but if you say that it's about ideas which have some kind of collective good and collective impact, which also suggests that there ought to be some idea of the public interest, rather than a transactional society in which private individuals can simply bargain their ideas with each other and trade, that's hugely problematic. I think when I think of politics, I don't think of a society in which ideas can be traded to suit the sort of narrow interests of individuals. And so I think having said that, politics is about an exchange of ideas in an inclusive and a transparent arena. That's how I think of it. And to the extent that we fail to create the spaces to allow that to happen, then don't have a politicized space. So I think politicized spaces are something to be embraced, and there's an idea of that's the kind of benchmark that we ought to aim for to determine whether we've arrived at that.
So from my understanding, it's basically an environment where there's this sort of power dynamic at play. Invisible or visible, am I right?
Well, there's always going to be, I think, and I think that's the issue. I think there's always going to be power imbalances, and so what we ought to strive for is, I know it sounds a bit trite, but I think sometimes when you strip it down to bare essentials, it's important to go back to these basic principles of not just why we study politics, but why we practice it every day. It's to try to highlight those power imbalances and minimize them as much as we can. And so that's where questions around inclusivity and transparency matter a great deal.
But I mean, politics in on its own, right? The power dynamics that are always at play every day. Can we say that these are natural? Like, does this just come about, or these are things that have been morphed and formed by human beings over time? What do you guys think this side? I don't think.
I think it really just depends on maybe what your definition of politicized means in the first place. And I think that, I mean, we all UCT, we all at UCT, we're students in this dynamic. I mean, I have a power dynamic between me and one of my students, my tuts. I have a power dynamic between me and Professor Naidu. You know, I think these things are socialized. And I think it's a product of the home environment that you're coming from. It starts off in the family, you expect your grand, you expect your elders. So naturally, as you evolve and you progress as people, as individuals, entering whatever spaces that you do in this university context, it transfers, I think. So at that level, I would say that politicized spaces, this is a politicized space. You know, your tutorial venue, your lecture room, the conversation you have with your friend is a politicized space. All around us is politics, right? So I guess it's just up to maybe your lived experience, the type of household you came from, like I said, your family. Those values and those morals are instilled in you, and to an extent you carry them over. So I guess.
All right, so if I'm getting you correctly, anything can be a politicized space. Everything is a politicized space, right? So social media is a politicized space in on its own, if you think about it. Because what shapes and what allows who gets to speak, how they get to speak, and how much traction something gets, that's all political if you think about it. Like, the reason why marketing is such a huge industry that's being capitalized and making loads of money is because they understand these politics at play. But I think as political activists, we like to call ourselves, right? digestible manner. I think if you guys are on TikTok, you know some lady named Amahle Jakha? You guys know her, right? Yeah. And she's like so cool. I wish I could say the other word, but I can't. She's so cool, right? And you have even people like the Three Beanies Network, if you guys are familiar. Like, there's so many people nowadays who are taking politics and turning it into this new age thing that's more relatable, more understandable, more fun in a way. But I think that's not everywhere. And I think to an extent there's some danger in that. Like when we stop having people who certified, people who actually got that certificate, who went through years of training and actually spread news that's like certified in a way, right? How dangerous can that be, if I may ask?
I think that's a good point because a lot of the time social media, yes, it's used as a tool to obviously create awareness, share information, it's easy and accessible, right? And like with people like Dan Porter and Caesar and Paul for Walsh, it becomes very, how do I say, tangible to layman's terms. But at the same time, like Olivia said, the danger with social media comes also, like Wayne said, where it becomes a performance and it's for content rather than anything. So does it look good that I'm posting something about Gaza for my friends, or is it actually for myself? So I think that could be the issue, right? But then also, guys, remember we live in South Africa. We have the most massive digital divide. So is it easy for people to get access to tools where they can find the sorts of information that is so tangible for you and I? And remember, while we do exist in South Africa as a democracy, it's not the same everywhere else in the world. We've seen, in my thesis is looking at the Arab Spring in Libya. The government used social media as a tool to suppress protesters, right? So at the same time, while it does allow for mass reach and mobilization, we must still consider the after effects. And I also think that with something like social media and these days and how it's evolving, everyone has a mic in front of them. I mean, what's this? Open chats. Everybody knows about open chats and what happened with open chats. Those guys don't deserve a microphone, you know? So it becomes dangerous when it's put in the hands of the wrong people, maybe.
So wait, have you heard about the manosphere? Like, do you guys know that whole idea of a manosphere coming up in the new age? I think it's around some item about like, okay, I can't describe it, right? But all I know is it's a dangerous thing that comes from these confirmation biases that Leo was telling me about the other day. So Leo was talking to me and she was like, you know, we're always surrounded by people who validate our thoughts. Like, if you think about it, your friends or your immediate family, they always they socialize with you and feed you these ideas that you already know if you think about it. And in a way, if you coagulate on internet, and you guys are a bunch of people who just confirm you the same thing, you guys can grow and become like a big problem. And the manosphere becomes guys like Andrew Tate, guys like Ben Shapiro. You know, like these dudes, they're saying dangerous things. And people are validating them, giving them traction, giving them that voice. I don't know what to say about that. Like, how can we target an enemy that we can't see? What do you say about that?
Thank you. I don't necessarily think that hot takes, that's a bad thing. I think that dealing with things like that is really important. If you think about how in discourse we deal with, especially in the UCT curriculum, we have to deal with the authors that we don't agree with in order to make any real change, especially if you're thinking about things like decoloniality, right? So if you want to critique Césaire, you have to read Césaire. I think that when you think about the internet specifically, it's the space that decentralizes knowledge, which then threatens institutional authority. But it does also create space for misinformation, that's true. However, as young people, we deserve political education that can affirm our critical thinking without policing the way that we express ourselves. So the danger isn't necessarily that you are voicing your opinion. Those opinions are always there. The internet is just a way to amplify that. The danger is having a system that fails to teach us media literacy in the first place, in my opinion.
What's media literacy? What is that?
Leo, what's media literacy? My media teacher over here.
Olivia, I taught you what media literacy was. So I would say media literacy, I guess, once again, it just depends on the context that you're speaking of, I think, in the first place. So I would say, as maybe my background coming up in a high school where they taught you how to use the computer, where they taught you how to use Google, how to find these sorts of things. In other schools, maybe in some other areas you don't get that luxury and that privilege, and it's not easy. And a lot of the times you see first years who don't know how to use computers. It's because they are product of that environment, right? And so suddenly they have to find out what Google Scholar is in the first place, while others, they already know it. So the thing about media literacy, and I think it's becoming more important these days because, like Laika said, misinformation is so apparent. Malinformation, disinformation, whatever you want to call it. And I think it's up to us, like Laika said, and institutions like UCT to help you evolve in your mindset of how you approach these things and teach you critical thinking alongside how to become literate in the media that you consume. You know? Yeah.
So we already see that there's a power dynamic at play within the knowledge production we get through that censorship. So now the problem is not what's happening on social media, it's how we see what time did it start? 6. What time was it? 1 hour before.
Is it speaking? Can you boost that there for me? Instance, I always think, and I'm not allowed, I'm not sure if I'll be censored or not. But for instance, I was listening to something. I'm not getting anything. I'm sorry. Sexualist as opposed to rape. So it lessens the charge because we're now speaking to a public audience. We're now having to appeal to a different audience or it needs to be publicly digestible, right? So when you think about digital activism or digital memory, we also need to think about the language that is being used. Similarly, another danger we can think about is we are currently in a situation where democracies are now being threatened or they are fragile democracies. So we need to think about how is this digital spaces, how is it facilitating historical denialism, how is it supporting authoritarianism, how is it also contributing to these narratives that might be detrimental to the state, but also to those communities who are not provided platforms to speak about their concerns.
But you know, like, I also figure something. As we're speaking, I'm also trying to figure out, there's so much voice, there's so much, we're talking about sound and making noise about something. What about not making noise? I also start thinking that sometimes when we're quiet about something, silent in some sort, it becomes a form of complicity in a manner. Like, for instance, we did mention that there's a problem of this champagne socialism. You see a problem, you want to talk about it because you want to get traction, you want to get likes, you want people to think that you're important or you're helping out, right? But what about people who don't even go through that process? What about people who keep quiet about issues that are hurting a person? Are you complicit or just a form of like, just avoiding serious routine? What is it?
This concern refers to media, people let's say like Tabati, there are certain issues who are not speaking or saying anything about it. I think we need to also be aware of the idea of activism, which I think is a very powerful concept. There might be people who might be interested and want to contribute to the discourse. However, because of limited of resources, they might not be able to have their contribution towards it. But that does not mean they are complicit in terms of what is happening. But also generally, let's say we speak about anything of oppression, or in my head, there's something that unjust happening and we do keep quiet about it. In particular, those who have power, we can let's say, let's talk about,
No, go ahead. I'm just.
Let's talk about issue of, let's say, film sport or anything like that, or matter like
Yeah.
that. And then there is a group of students who will be just
Holding their hands, doing nothing. Yeah.
Clearly, they are privileged, so they decide to be not be involved then in such situation. I'm not saying that because of the injustice that is currently taking place.
Would you be comfortable if I called them? Sorry, without cutting you off. Go ahead.
I just want to expand upon that. So to perhaps war, some people tend to essentially draw back from that to protect themselves. Because the definition of self-preservation is essentially characteristics, feelings, and behaviors that persons do to prevent themselves being harmed. And just talking generally, people do not interact or engage with politics because it is perhaps a matter of survival. Like my colleague mentioned, they're more concerned with their daily concerns, their daily lives, getting food on the table, getting essentially a job to provide for their family, concerned with providing a better future for themselves. So they don't necessarily perhaps have the time to engage with the political landscape. But the thing is, when it comes to issues that affect us on a grander scheme, like for example, fees must fall, it's an issue within the university itself, and it is a benefit. These protests are a benefit for the student body as a whole. And thus, in that turn, self-preservation becomes self-incriminating, and it becomes complicity, even though one may not believe it, because the students that decide to, okay, I silently support the protesters. I support in speaking the protesters with regards to fees must fall. But I'm much more concerned with my studies because that is essentially my survival mode. Because when we're at university, we're in survival mode with regards to our grades and everything. So some students, with regards to protests, that doesn't affect them, or they think it doesn't affect them, or doesn't matter to them in the moment, they are more likely not to engage with that sphere. But the thing is, it is self-incriminating because it is for the benefit of the student body.
Okay, without interjecting too much, without like cutting off this flow that's going on, I want to quickly just go and break. I think we want to fix something about the mics. But for now, if you guys have any thoughts ruminating, please feel free to interject now. This is your time to put us on scrutiny, like ask what's burning in all this. What do you guys think? Is social media activism? Is it complicity when you keep quiet? Give us all these ideas. The mic will come around shortly.
Hi everyone, my name is Bongani Dindi. This is more of a comment as opposed to a question or rebuttal to anything. Sorry, my bad. This is more of a comment as opposed to a rebuttal or question. I think there's been a lot of focus on how we can become activists by actively participating and releasing content, but I think we can also participate as activists by how we consume content. I think there's a lot of focus on how we can put stuff out there, but not a lot of focus on how we can receive stuff, or more importantly, what we receive and how we can receive stuff that sort of interrogates what we already believe. And I think social media is good in that it can augment your understanding of the situation, but I think it's also not sufficient. I think once you see stuff that interrogates your own beliefs, you can gives you an opportunity to dive deeper into those things. And I think we need to put a lot more focus on how we can become activists as consumers to inform ourselves so that we can inform.
Greetings, everyone. So we're speaking about politics and social media, right? And the question that was posed to us was that people who do not speak up on social media being complacent. And I think it then depends on who you are and what you know, right? For example, if you are aware or you're conscious enough to know that as a black person or as a woman, there are issues that are going on in your institution, or there are issues that are going on inside your structure, and you keep quiet about it, then you're being complacent. Then you are then you have no right to call yourself a revolutionary or a feminist. Because there's something that I always say is that claiming that you're a revolutionary and being a feminist, people tend to pick when to be feminist or when to be revolutionary or when to be politicians. And they choose to be politicians when it's comfortable to them. But when you have to actually do the work, the uncomfortable part of being a feminist, post that post, rage bait those racist or sexist on social media, we then tend to move back. So it depends on what you know. But also, to add on a bit, I feel like there's a way we can use social media into our advantage. Political education, I'm a firm believer of political education because I believe everything starts in the mind. We can never revolutionize or move somewhere if you are not aware or you're not conscious. And it's the duty of the conscious to conscientize the unconscious. So if you know that you know something and the next person doesn't know, it's your duty to say, hey, you're actually oppressed. Do you understand? So those are the other ways that you can utilize social media being toxic. That's something that you cannot help because not everyone thinks the same way as you do. But you can, in your little corner, use social media into your advantage. Speak about Gaza, even if 2 people viewed it, that's a lot of people, because those 2 people are gonna educate their 2 people. So in total, you've educated 4 people. So let's not try to look at the bigger picture. Look at yourself, what you can do using your personal account or your political account or whatever. Thank you.
If you'd like to add a comment or add to the conversation, but you're not comfortable addressing the crowd, you can scan the QR code.
Oh, sorry. Hi, everyone. Okay. This is taking it a little bit away from social media, but still on activism. And this is a question for the panel. So I used to be a politics student, but I stopped studying politics actually because I just felt like we talk a lot about things like educating people and being political, but I felt that I struggled to feel the concreteness of it. And now I'm studying law, and to be honest, I do feel that I do feel like there's a closer link to me. It feels between what I'm studying and like actually being able to do things. So, no offense, by the way, but to the political scholars here, I'd really like to hear how you feel like your work and your research, how it relates to the world, other than just being able to educate and just being able to talk. Yeah, that's my question.
All right. I'm not a big political scholar. I'm a student just like everyone else. But I think I hear you. Because sometimes, like, not even because I feel insignificant, but there are times when I get tired. Because, like, have you ever sat down and thought to yourself, the demon that I'm fighting is much, much bigger than I think. Dude, capitalism is an untouchable, huge leviathan that we cannot get to in one go. You know what I mean? And it's like, you're always sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, what's a single student broke? Like, what am I gonna do? Like, I'm just one person and I'm going up against this beast, right? But at that point, I thought about this amazing scholar named Césaire, right? In 1956, he talked about how a doctrine, something you do, is only of value if you teach it, if you live it, if you practice it, and if you breathe it. So I feel like, yeah, I hear you when you say, we're doing nothing. But at the same time, I'm like, you haven't died doing nothing yet. Keep doing it, you feel me? But I don't know how others feel about it. What do you guys think? Feels like we're playing hot potato now. Prof, what do you, the mic is over there.
Okay. I'm not going to break. Oh, there we go. That's a lot better. Thank you for that question. It's a great question. Puts me on the spot because now I've got to justify my professional existence and explain to my family what I what I do to earn a living. No, it's a great question because I mean, I think what your question um, conjures up in my mind is it's a contrast, but it's also a way of understanding a relationship between what we started out talking about, which was what is a politicized space, and the other aspect, the more tangible aspect of what we research and what we teach, which is some kind of authority structure. So we can speak about nice words like inclusiveness and transparency when we personalize politics, and we kind of strip it down to its bare essentials, which is really the right to disagree, the right to people to exchange ideas and even disagree about how to do what's in the public or collective interest. There's that side of politics, which I know feels a bit fuzzy in those lecture halls, doesn't feel very tangible. But that has to then intersect with really the politics in its most tangible sense, which is who are the authority structures, what are the authority structures, and who staffs those authority structures that can either make or break all of these grand ideas that we have about how to make a better life. And I think that's the tangible, I mean, that for me makes my job meaningful. You know, I can speak about concepts such as accountability and transparency and inclusiveness and ethics, but I'm not doing it in a vacuum. I'm thinking about why those things are important in order to challenge authority structures, in order to speak truth to power, as they say, right? So you've got to, that's the tangible hook, that those things are meaningful to the extent that we, whether we like it or not, have to live with some form of government, these authority structures. How do we know that they're working in our best interests? How do we make them work in our best interests? How do we influence the people on the inside of government? So we've always got to be thinking that's the tangible thing. And so I mean, you've gone into law now. I hope you study constitutional law or public law, because that's where politics meets the tangibility of these authority structures. How do we change the DNA of government? You do it through legislation, through policy, through holding these officials to account, exposing what they're doing, praising them for doing the right thing, right? So I hope, I'm a curriculum advisor. I hope I can bring you back, change your major, and but I think we've got to be, politicized spaces mean little without thinking about how we can use them to challenge the hardware of politics, which is those authority structures.
Can I put you on? Would you mind? At the top of my head, as Prof was explaining brilliantly about this idea of the intersection between politics and real life and how we can make a difference, I thought about this idea of the revolution, right? We live in a revolution. We are part of the revolution every single day. But to an extent, I also then question, is the revolution still standing? Or have we failed? Have we lost? Have we been co-opted in the greater scheme of things? What do you guys think?
Revolution. I do think the elites most of the time, the elites do overtake whatever it is or revolutionary idea or thought by the general people or the masses of the people, and then they use it for their social upliftment. Just I think if you can also go just in the history of revolutions, they all start by what people want, and then I think once it gets to be organized, then we have to elect leaders. Once the leaders get to be elected, they change and then be complicit with this structure. Be it you look at Russian Revolution. That's why also the peasants, they also revolted against Lenin, saying, seems like it's not what we wanted, now what you, the elites, are giving us. So I think if an actual revolution to happen, the masses or the people themselves, they need to dismantle the ideas of the structures. I'm not okay, Bakunin, who is said to be anarchist, but once I think the structure, once we tend to structure things, then it gets to be co-opted and then diluted, and then the elites take over.
So there's a form of life cycle that happens. Like
Yeah.
it starts out hard burning,
Yeah.
it gets noticed, it gets bureaucratized, it becomes the structure, people start getting elected, then it gets lazy.
Yeah, I think also it also can relate to my sister idea of politics. I think just not just only politics, it get to be, or political studies get to be more about talking. I just think also about just all academic disciplines, because you hear in recent, in particular, past few months, people graduating, getting degrees, and then the people ask, not just only questioning politics or political science, but general degrees or disciplines like, how are we benefiting as the ordinary people from what you guys are doing at the university or at the research institute? So it just become like that, be it revolutionary idea, be it comes to law, you can come with the best constitution, like ours, it says it's the best constitution in the world, have top legal minds, good jurisprudence, but it does not translate in terms of changing the reality of the people. So it just co-option, it happens across the board, not just revolutionary, disciplinary. You have to discipline also your idea, have your idea disciplined according to political science. In political science, this is how we think. In law, this is how we do things. In engineering, all of them, the disciplines.
So I wanted to expand upon what my colleague was stating, and yes, I do think that the revolution has been co-opted, but in the extent of there has been a switch. So those who have been part of the liberation movements that we have known have embraced the systems that they have fought against. And this is connecting back to what he said, we have revolution and then they become lazy. But it's in the sense of they fought against these systems and now they've embraced it, such as neoliberal systems of government that have come from the global north and westernized society, like the emphasis of globalization, free trade, and deregulation, and thus forcing the shift of power from the state to corporations. So it's following much more suit of perhaps the American system. Of course, we are a complex system of made of many, but and we still have our individualized own ingrained systems. But the thing is that we are embracing these elitist systems. And now universities are another example of where there are less places of less of intellectual resistance, where intellectual resistance is being formed. And it's more about mass producing hegemonic neoliberal knowledge. And of course, UCT is fighting against this. We can see it in our courses. But it is a much larger issue. There's multiple universities in this country, and this is a broader issue, not just in South Africa, but in also former colonized places. And universities are now being run like businesses instead of being places of free thought and intellectual resistance and challenging hegemonic principles. And in that sense, the revolution has been co-opted because we have embraced these systems that we have fought so hard against.
I don't know how many people around here are published. Who's published? Just by a show of hands. Is anyone in here published? No. Besides my professor over there. Tell us, Prof. I know that there's a whole politics and there's a whole lot of navigating you do when you're publishing a paper. Like, how complicated is it?
That's a whole other topic now. So it's there's a politics to publishing, and I think you might not have been exposed to the in and outs and the mechanics of that, but it's a strange thing that politics infuses everything. If you spoke a lot about power dynamics and power imbalances. Publishing is also penetrated by power politics because, when you publish, you are asserting an argument. You are using, hopefully, credible data and evidence to make a point, challenge an assumption, draw different conclusions. And if the people that you want to publish your work don't agree with that, the process of peer review can break you down, reject your argument, force you to alter it, distort it, even in ways that work against you. I saw something the other day, I think it was on LinkedIn, and this actually has to do with citation fraud. Somebody posted a rejection letter that an academic received from a journal, why we can't publish your article. And actually, sorry, I got it the wrong way around. So somebody posted a letter which seemed to have exposed the attempt by two peer reviewers, so academics who have been asked to review a journal article, to force the author to cite their work in order to increase their Google metrics score, even though the work had nothing to do with the content of the article. So here was two peer reviewers trying to strong-arm an author who was trying to get published into citing work that was just not relevant, but would obviously advantage the peer reviewers themselves. So that's a power play. That's the politics manipulating what ought to be a process that has a high level of integrity to ensure that ideas that matter, ideas that ought to be given the light of day, are able to be put out there. So it was a startling thing, and I'm sure there's other concerning developments around the use of AI, and the kinds of things that we speak to you sternly about not to do in your essays are also things that academics are doing who are trying to get published. So using these large language model platforms to be able to manipulate and in some cases fabricate evidence. So these are things which are fast moving, and it's really changing the publishing landscape, creating lots of risks for those of us who have to do this. It's a key part of our job, but there are lots of hurdles and obstacles that we're having to face in the politics of publishing.
As well, because when I think about publishing, for instance, right, I automatically think about all these journals that I do my homework on, like JSTOR and Taylor and Francis and all these fancy places. But like the other day, I was reading a piece from an African journal. I think it was, I'm so hazy, I'm sorry. I did my research and I was like, okay, who owns this journal house? Like, that was a good question. Who's controlling the knowledge that I'm reading right now? And I found that that board is comprised of less than 5% of people of color. And that scared me. How can you guys talk about Africa? How can you talk about my continent and about my politics without resonating? What do you think about that, Leah?
I have 2 points to make, actually. Just going back onto what Prof said about publishing, and maybe this will tie into the question on co-optation of the revolution. So I was at a conference about a month or two ago, and one of the themes of the conference was decolonializing the archives. So maybe artifacts, pictures, material, whatnot. But what I found so interesting about that conference was the makeup and the demographic of that conference was speaking on decolonializing African artifacts, right? Being held at the Graduate School of Business,
at UCT, a very much expensive place. And one of the things that stood out to me was there was one project specifically that was looking at the Sudanese genocide that happened decades ago. And what was interesting is that the people who were on the project, only one of them was actually Sudanese. So then you must now go back and think, like you said, Wayne, who is creating this knowledge and who is reproducing this knowledge? Because yes, it's all good and well for academics maybe from the global north to come into a global south and write a paper about African experiences. But at the end of the day, that paper is going to be published and it's going to say University of Edinburgh. So in a way, that does co-opt what research is doing or what research is attempting to do in universities. And then I forgot the second question. Oh, power and control within maybe power structures in media, wherever it may be. That example is good, and I always like to turn to the example of NASPERS. Everybody knows NASPERS. NASPERS is owned, News 24 is owned by NASPERS. Okay, so if you look at the makeup of NASPERS, NASPERS is an apartheid company, guys, and we know that. They own Van Schalk books, they own poetry, they own all of these things, right? So the news that you read is being tailored to what they want you to think. Okay, just if you guys haven't read Noam Chomsky and Propaganda Model, please read Noam Chomsky and Propaganda Model, because that will tell you everything you need to know about the media and how it makes you think what they want you to think. Okay, so at the end of the day, you must question, is your knowledge really yours? Or is it a product of influence? Is it a product of what you've read, what you've written, maybe? And where is it coming from at the same time? Because yes, it's very well to go and read a News 24 article, but who's paying that journalist to write in that specific way? Who are the owners behind the scenes? If you look at a web page for, once again, News 24, it's those advertisers who are paying. The journalist is not going to publish something that the advertisers don't agree with, okay, at the end of the day. So I think something like media and how it's being used to spread political information really just depends on where you're getting it from. So I would say, as students, as people who would believe ourselves to be critical thinkers, right, we need to actually go and find where the source is from. Am I going to consult News 24? Am I going to go to Daily Maverick? You need to decide for yourself. Okay, so thinking about those things and thinking about how influence and power, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in these bureaucratic structures. It's in the newsroom where they're talking about these issues. It's in even what you're reading at the end of the day. Yeah.
What about the classroom?
The classroom. I think maybe that's why Christina left politics, is because I was a tutor. But no, but in the classroom, I think for me personally, if you've ever been taught by me or if you've ever attended one of my lectures, I tend to be very opinionated, but I always preface that with, please make your own assumptions. Because I don't think it's our job as educators, all of us on this panel are educators in one way or the other. I don't think it's our job for us to push propaganda. I don't think it's our job for us to indoctrinate you into our way of thinking. It's for us to put the cards on the table and say, it's your deal, right? So in classrooms, obviously depending on who's the professor, who's the lecturer, who's whomever, it may has the potential. I don't know.
I think you guys have power, and I think you guys have a lot of power, because I look at states where there's this intersection, Prof, between the actual political space and the educational space. And I think there's this power dynamic that then frames what knowledge production is occurring. On the top of my head, I'm like, okay, during one-party states in China, right? What do you think was being taught in the classroom? What do you think the kids were being told about how to act around political figures? What do you think they were being taught about how to express yourself politically? And in a way, when you think about this intersection and how it then translates in the classroom, I then wonder, are we ever going to achieve decolonization of the society if our own classrooms are colonized in a way? This is open to anyone, to be honest.
Okay, so I think I'm going to circle back to journal editors, funding bodies, the networks that do citations. They are all still controlled, like Leah said, by white institutions from the global north, right? Academic capitalism is something that rewards conformity to Western norms in terms of publishing, language, how we frame our research. That's not something that's accidental. That's something that is put in place to preserve epistemic hegemony, right? We know that. The thing about colonial models is that they provide predictability, control, and financial return. When we think about something like racial pedagogy, it's harder to commodify that. So the university, the revolution, any institution that we're thinking of, it's invested in the stability that it gets from the colonial models and the predictability that comes from that. It's not invested in our liberation. When we think about something like decolonizing academia, it's more than just adding African scholars to the syllabus. It means that we actually have to dismantle the entire architecture that we've been given and then consider the architecture of who considers who's credible, so that we can see what do things like legitimacy mean. Why do the people that have voices have the voices? Why are we still giving them these voices? How do we give them these voices? How do we empower without finding our legitimacy from these people that have disempowered us in the first place?
On your contribution, when you were speaking about can we have a possibility of a decolonized society? And then also we started with academia. Is it like academia more receptive to decolonization? Last year, my colleagues wrote something and then a paper. Towards the end of the paper, what we argued is like we are gravitating towards a decolonial fatigue, or put differently, in a co-optation of the decolonization in the institutions. When the decolonization call started, universities rejected it, but now they are accepting it. You will find, be it in certain departments, having a committee that looks to decolonize the curricula or decolonize the university, or you look universities mission statements, they are all now embracing decolonization. But in that decolonization, it therefore dilute decolonization of what it is meant about. And then again, talking of what Prof was talking about, become the idea of citation. People are producing for to be cited and then not actually doing the decolonization. For instance, had decolonization, or if we try to decolonize our society, today, I think this year is 10 years after the fees must fall, but every year students are still expressing the very same things that 2016, 2015, or at the advent of democracy that they were raised, and then yet universities unanimously are claiming we are decolonial, we are committed to decolonization, but nothing is changing. So at this current stage, and also, should I say? Also, certain students who are part of the decolonization, they get to be co-opted by the system. You see them, others in parliament. Once issues of actual decolonization, they just start telling the students, what about the rules? You need to follow A, B, C, D. Others now are part and parcels of universities, be it spokesperson, defending the unjust or the violence universities unleashing to the students. So on the idea of decolonial society, I do not think yet we are there. We still need to do more serious work. Starting again, publication. Why do we still have publication that when you want to access them, you have to pay money? Yet scholars who produce there, they do not get to be paid. So all those things, making knowledge to be accessible to the society for free. We need also to question the ideas of journals made to be made freely, because also the scholars are not get paid for publishing. You labor for free.
In terms of everything we've just said right now that you have a broader understanding of how knowledge is produced and given to you, what are your thoughts? Do you guys think we're winning this battle? Do you guys think we're going to have hope of actually turning things around? Or are we just going to get sucked into the same machine that's been winning this whole time? Oh, yeah?
Okay, so I'll come back to all of you. Coming to Leah's point about having to reimagine the archives, and you were talking about decolonizing the archives. I think that is so important because if we think back to, I mean, this is a couple of years ago, if you think back to the classrooms in your high schools, and if anyone took history, you were told what to think, right? And then you came to UCT and you were encouraged to think differently, especially if you started at UCT after Rhodes Must Fall, Fees Must Fall, the decolonial agenda that was adopted in the curriculums offered at UCT. But when I think about this, and it's such a good point that Leah raised, is you always have to think about who's creating the knowledge. Are you yourself reproducing those colonial paradigms? And you always have to be self-reflective or critical about what you are reading as a student, as a political commentator, as a professor. And sometimes I often think about the archives. So a couple of years ago, just quickly, a couple of years ago, I did my master's thesis, and I was looking at the histories of forced displacement or during apartheid. And I was informed to go to the archives in Rulan Street, right? And when I got there, a lot of the sources are those very same sources that were produced by the colonialists. So I was then encouraged to think about, well, should I think about archives in a different way? And it led me to this notion of oral histories, engaging with the everyday person on the street, getting different narratives as opposed to just being forced to be thinking of or forced to accept these state-imposed narratives. So that's another thing. We actually, if we would like to create a culture of accountability to, especially later on, I think we're talking about corruption, right? And all of that. If we are trying to create a culture of accountability to address impunity, maybe a good place to start is to reimagine what the archives mean, to reimagine memory work, to reimagine what well, not what decolonialism means, but if we think about post-colonialism versus decolonialism, it's all of those things that we just need to be self-reflective, just critically think about these things and don't just accept what you are told. Don't take things at face value. I think that's our role as students, professors, political commentators as well.
I have some comments from online. The first one, I think we need bolder political students and activists who can collectively work towards social justice and transformation. The next question is, would you say that politics is a battle of power dynamics between the global north versus the global south? I don't know if you want to take those first and then move to the crowd, or... Or do you want to...
I do believe that it is essentially a war between the global north versus the global south. And this is because the global north, or ideologies that come from the global north, have affected the global south so incredibly much through the systems of colonization. And as a whole, we are still living in colonized mindsets that are from the global north. And we see it here in our universities, we see it in our government, we see it on the TV, media, etc. For example, with social media, like for example, like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, well, now X, they're all American. They are American companies, and even Google is an American company. And on social media, like one thing that we've noticed is that there's a lot more American politics on social media compared to South African politics. And as a result, people know more about what's happening in the United States than what's happening here in South Africa, the actual issues that are happening here in South Africa. For example, the housing crisis that we have here. So even though we have broken away, like, in some sense from colonization, we're still living in a colonized society mind-wise. And even our legal systems are, in some sense, still colonized. So we as a society needs to analyze our day-to-day behaviors and see, okay, how is this shaped? How is my thinking shaped? Is it something that comes from perhaps a much more traditional perspective, from my cultural perspective, or is it coming from somewhere else? Is it an American hegemony? Is it a Western hegemony? And etc.
So we need to be fighting not just legally, politically, but also in our day-to-day lives as well.
Open the floor.
All right. I'm going to speak mainly to this idea of hegemony and the dominance of, political thought, specifically within economics. It's going to be a bit subject specific. So the study of economics across academia is heavily politicized. I would argue that economic policy and economists have an outsized role in shaping our society as a whole, intersecting just about every social struggle that exists. I believe that the current neoclassic machine model of economics taught throughout universities, especially at this foundational level, actively suppresses a much needed plurality within that academic space, and is done directly at the behest of those who stand to benefit from its continuation. I'd also like to highlight here the influence of private interest in shaping academia as a whole. In light of a deepening inequality crisis, rising fascism, and environmental collapse, should we not be scrutinizing more closely the power imbalance that exists specifically within economics and how it has an effect on everyone, especially domestically? Should we not be scrutinizing how it exists within pretty much every academic institution? Does the current state of economics even deserve to be called or considered a science? How can we actively challenge the inherently self-serving hegemony of neoliberal thought that has a stranglehold on just about all economic institutions?
Do you want to take that, or can I pass the mic? Okay, anyone else in the crowd?
Yeah, there we go. Great question. And so currently I convene the PPE program. And I think that's a program, by its very design, can be a great vehicle to critique and be self-reflective about the shortcomings of economic philosophy. All right, the fact that we don't even force anymore. I mean, we get more students wanting to do PPE because I think they see not just the intersection and the kind of, it's the intersection between the three disciplines, but also the fact that they're more than their individual parts. So if you study politics, philosophy, and economics together, you're able to draw from critical philosophy, political realism, to be able to challenge the sort of dominant economic philosophy. So, I mean, it's not a solution. I agree with you, but I think sometimes how we package knowledge in these sort of degree structures can actually create the means for you to push back at a particular strand of thinking that seems to dominate, a discipline like economics. And so, yeah, I think it's, speaking, I've been involved with PPE for many years, and there was a year where I think we need to have another one. We had an essay contest, and I think it was, we had the 3 finalists present their papers orally to an audience. And what struck me there was how thoughtful and reflective and critically insightful these students were, particularly about the concerns they had about dominant economic theory, right, which is exactly what you're pointing to. So I think there are vehicles that we can create and nurture that speak to the very heart of your concerns, which I share, actually.
Hi, I'm gonna try to do this in order. I think, first of all, talking to institutions or panels and conferences and all, I think there's a constant sort of cycle of institutionalizing the, I think, the discussions themselves. It sort of takes away, in a sense, the radicalism from the discussion. It professionalizes the political dissent, and it's diffusing the radical intent of like political discourse in a sense. And I think that leads on to the second point of like, in terms of change, we talk about it in a sense of, I think, diplomatically. And I don't think that's really going to work. As much as I'm here talking about it, we're going to continue talking about it, because the change that we talk about is a change that we may not see in our lifetime. It may be a change that we never see because we die before it happens and the cycle continues. We will be radical as we are students, but once we enter the capitalist beast of the world, we end up being in the same cycle, being those same corrupt politicians, not because we choose to, but because it eats us into it. Because the people that are there are the people that we are under, the people that we cannot go above without submitting to such a system. On top of that, I think there are a few questions or opinions. I don't think we're willing to pay that price of discomfort to create such a radical change and unlearn certain systems and create sort of the Afrocentric education or decolonized education that we believe, mainly because, I mean, it'll take our salaries away and we're not gonna have anything to live off. And that's just the hard truth that we accept. So what is the true cost of freedom? Sorry. And then on top of that, I think we have this thing of the constant protests for students. This fees must fall thing, it's been going on, I'm pretty sure, for quite a while now, but as much as they're sort of called disruptive, do we not need to, you know, I mean, make people in power uncomfortable in order to make them submit to something? Because I know coming to the table is not something people will take seriously until you start, don't quote me on this, but burning a building. So, I mean, how do we challenge the notion that order is more valuable than justice in a political space? The last part I have, I think, is to Leah's point. I think it was in terms of having a voice. But it's sort of this thing of visibility versus actually having a voice. We have African Union summits where 50% of the representatives are donors from Europe, but we're not able to sort of create those funds within the African continent. Sure, it gets better over time. We have people like Burkina Faso showing an example of what African states should be like. I mean, the independence is not an easy journey, but it is the right journey. Again, not something we're willing to do. But I think in political spaces, there's this thing of being heard. Oftentimes, diverse representation is a facade of inclusion with no substantive impact. In addition to power being defined by financial strong arms, how do we move beyond representation and actually redistribute power? We see it in political parties, we see it in the market, we see it, whoever has the biggest buck is the one with the voice.
Thank you. I'm going to take a hand from this side. Also, we would like to encourage that the crowd address the question from the crowd, not just between the panel and the crowd. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. So my question is, how do we push back against particular strands of thinking when we ourselves are trapped in the harsh economic realities of South Africa? We are told not to study studies such as politics or anything in the humanities because it's for the advantaged people. You're told that there's academic degrees which you should not take if you come from a disadvantaged family. So we're encouraged to take the quickest way out. So how do we expect people facing the very same system to actually strive for change without having the worry of, what am I gonna do in the future? Am I gonna have food on my table? Am I gonna be able to provide for myself and my family if I take this particular degree? And it goes say with social media as well, we have people like Ogift Pozekana telling people, do not study this, study that. This is a useless degree. And we cannot really persecute them because we ourselves can actually see the limitations and the constraints within the humanities or the political degrees that we're doing. Thank you.
Oh, that hand, do you still have a question?
My question goes back to something that you said earlier on about policy making. If you had the opportunity to be president for one day, you would take away everyone that's working in parliament, which I agree. And the academia space, I think one of the people here mentioned a good point where education, or specifically in the subject of history in high school, we only taught about apartheid. South Africa's history is not limited to apartheid. There was history before 1947. There was history in Africa. We had kings. We have our own legacy. So in high school, a platform where we are supposed to be taught how to critically think, like Leah said, and a platform where we're supposed to evolve, that when we come out of matric, we know what we want to study, limits us in terms of education or in terms of knowledge about our own country. How do we then bring about change in what she said, not studying politics because of the economic space? Because I do believe there's money in policy making, changing the world within the right sphere, not only being advocates. I think so many people are going to want to be advocates, and then they complain about, yeah, the government is not paying attention to this, the government is not really doing that, but no one really talks about policy making at career expeditions. No one talks about, I had a conversation with a town planning. No one talks about these niche careers that are there for black people, that will help us or enable our communities to grow in a better way when our high school fails us, private sector and public sector. So how then do we go about it? How do we tell the next generation this is how you go about it when we ourselves come to university and we still fail?
Oh.
Hi everyone. My question is kind of for everyone here because I think like most of us are Gen Z, millennial, somewhere around there. We talk a lot about journal articles and academia, but I think a lot of us go back to our communities at home and still have a lot of people from high school or wherever who are not being further educated, which is not a problem at all. But the general population seems to be very disillusioned with politics. I had a talk with my friend who's studying something in medical, and she said, we were talking about pala pala, and she's like, I can't believe Cyril would do that. And I was telling her about it, she's like, but he's Cupcake, how can Cupcake do that? And I had another friend who just relies on like Sense Central and News Nexus and like TikToks for news. And just a lot of people, and even I went to a media lecture, and the lecturer asked, do you think Elon Musk owning X has anything to do with the content on there? And 3 people put up their hand and said, it's got absolutely nothing to do with it, it's just Twitter. Which is such a wild thing to say to me when he's got like a crazy affiliation with Trump and so many other things. So for those of you who've been tutors and stuff, do you really think critical thinking is dead, like TikTok says or whatever? Do you think that millennials had better critical thinking? Do you think the people that were born way before us had better critical thinking? Are we really losing critical thinking amongst the Africans? Do we not have political education? And how do we, and not just in academics, but general population, everyone on the ground, how do we actually promote that in a sensible way that doesn't just feel like everyone just believes that South Africa is corrupt, which, I mean, it is, but yeah.
Thanks.
Before I give it to the panelists to actually then answer, I have something to say. The gentleman over there talked about how we're sacrificing radicalism by institutionalizing this whole idea of knowledge production, right? That whole chat that you spend 45 minutes on 45 minutes, lecture by lecture, sitting in a chair amid how many people listening to one person at a time. And I think, and this is not me running promo, don't think that this is, but I think this is why our society then feels like this is why we need events like this, where you have your panelists. You're not going to sit through a whole lecture the whole time. You're supposed to engage and question and interject, because we feel like the classroom is politicized. And that's what we're trying to problematize. That's what we're trying to bring to everyone's attention, that guys, we need to stop buying into this idea that there's only one lecturer in every lecture hall. Or we need to stop buying into this idea that a classroom was meant to disseminate knowledge in one direction. You get what I mean? Like, all of us have power, all of us have knowledge, and if we can all contribute to cooking that pie, we can make something beautiful, in my opinion. So I commend that input, by the way. Guys, please take away.
I want to respond to your question with regards to education and critical thinking skills development. So, one thing that I personally believe and come to understand is that education as a whole is built foundationally to keep us as the general public in the dark and complicit. So, I'm originally from the United States. So, in the United States, we have the very same problem. And of course, we have the divide between the South and the North. So, but the thing is, as a whole, as a country as a whole, Americans or American children are not even taught about their own governmental systems. Same here in South Africa. And so there are many Americans that are in existence in the United States today that do not actually understand how the Congress works, how the executive work, how the judiciary work as a whole. So they do not know how to actually properly engage in political spheres at all. And that is one of the reasons why we have the situation in the United States to this day. And in some sense, it's similar here in South Africa, where education as a whole is not really taught to essentially engage critical thinking skills. They're taught to be complicit, to follow orders, because that is what the neoliberal order wants us to do, to essentially follow the line of capitalism and join companies, etc., and essentially do what we're told. And a lot of the things that we are given, such as our rights, in a sense, and this is a whole entire another debate about, etc., are essentially given to us just to make us remain complicit. We're given the right to education to make us remain complicit. We're given the right to freedom of speech to remain complicit, because we have these little things to in some sense, protect us, but in reality they don't. And that is what the education system does. It keeps us in the dark so we remain complicit. And it does not teach critical thinking skills, which is lacking in students that are coming to university. I'm a tutor and I see it. There's not many students that engage with me when I ask them a very just generic, maybe political question about what do you think about this movement or the definition of this term. None of them really want to engage with it because they do not know how to engage with those spaces and critically think about the things that they are learning, because they're not taught that in schools. So they come to university and we have to teach them. And that is not completely correct. They should come to university to be with those skills, or at least the foundation of those skills, so we can build upon them. But now we're the ones teaching them from the ground up, and that's a problem.
I think I must start with your question about certain disciplines who are said not like more desirable in terms of employment. I think that is a fallacy that has been created again by neoliberalism. Who would have thought in South Africa, a country that we have a large population who needs medical attention, but we have medical doctors who are unemployed? So that it takes away the fallacy that there are certain disciplines or certain degrees that are not desirable or that cannot be able to offer you unemployment. Capitalism or neoliberalism does not care. It is interested in creating a surplus labor, regardless of your degree. So you can have engineering degree, medical doctor, but if according to capitalism at that moment it needs 100 workers, it doesn't care about how fancy your degree it is. There's an interesting course offered by Professor Sanda Benya in sociology in this semester. It also looks on such things where or the rise of neoliberalism and the repercussions of it. Yeah, I think maybe if you have time you can attend it. It's an interesting course. There's a brother who talked about the institutionalization as in, if I paraphrase him, enemy of the radicalization or decolonization. For instance, here at university itself, to make it more practical example, where you have maybe more than 4 faculties. Let's say you are a humanities student or doing politics or social science. You want to understand about the history of South Africa public health. Then you search, go to our library, and then the library directs you to health science. The colonial education or colonial structure of the education, it created silos. If you are social science, focus only on social science, nothing else concerned about health science. That's why they do not give you access to health science. You need to go in and sign there as a stranger, yet you are in the same institution, UCT, but a colonial institution or colonial education, it says, what is it that concerns you so much with health science, yet you are, with health science, yet you are social science? Stay in social science, do not bother to go to health science. Let's say you are also wanting to read about interesting article by Judge Mujapel about separation of power. Faculty of Law is not far from us here, just down the road. If I want to go to Library of Law to borrow that book or that article, the law faculty says, you are a political science, remain within this discipline of political science, do not go that side. There are lawyers who are going to deal with that thing. So if I think that is a problem of institutionalization, and it's also practical terms. People also will look at a broader level, as it also says to us, there are certain degrees that are not worthy to be studied, yet it's a capitalist thinking that tells us such a thing. All degrees matters, but capital is interested in surplus of labor. No matter you can have PhD in whatever degree, but if it doesn't want you at that moment, you are not going to get employment.
You said a very interesting term, social silos. This idea that our disciplines, by virtue of being a discipline, compartmentalizes us into these weird groups, if you think about it. Why is it that law faculty is supposed to be thrown down there far away from the main library? Why is FHA's, like medical science campus, why is it thrown all the way that direction? And arts, and on and on and on. And it made me think off the top of my head, when Marx talked about this idea that capital creates its own destruction by alienating us from the means of our works. The fact that we're thinking separately, the fact that we're told to think in our disciplines without intersectionality, it's capital just trying to like confuse us basically, to keep us from coming together and then actually going up against them, you feel me? So I think in a way, to challenge that, if I got you correctly, we should think beyond our disciplines. Yes, I'm a law student, prospective lawyer, whatever, but at the same time, I should be allowed to think like a political theorist. I should be allowed to think like a social scientist. And same goes along with everyone else. You can be an engineer, but you think like a philosopher. There's nothing wrong with that. That's my takeaway from that. So sorry, let's finish up the questions. I'm getting excited. Anyone wants to engage?
Let me just speak on that issue of critical thinking, and then maybe also the idea of radicalism within the classrooms. And I think we touched on that earlier, and we spoke about, yes, you come into university with these ideas, yes, you may have partaken in fees must fall, roads must fall, yet when you enter in the system, you become a clog in the machine, and suddenly you're a part of it. So I think it more becomes a question of morals and morality than anything else. Because do you really think that Chris Hani, Robert Sobukwe thought about their salary when they were willing to die for apartheid? And I think I actually posed that question to Wayne. Would we right now be willing to die for anything? No. I don't know. You know, that's up to you. But me, myself, no. You know. So I think it comes down to morality at the end of the day. And where do you stand? And then also about the critical thinking. And I think you touched on that nicely, because what I see with a lot of students, and I myself am guilty, when I was in undergrad, I did not want to go to the lectures because it felt like a to-do list. I need to go to lectures, I need to go to TATs, you know, all of these things. But once you remove that, I need to be at that class at 8 a.m. from your head, and you actually start engaging with the material itself, I think that's when that barrier becomes removed. And what I say all the time is that a reading shouldn't be approached with, it's an obstacle. Let me take it in, be comfortable in the uncomfortability, and perhaps in that way I can learn more. And the issue about critical thinking, and what I've noticed, I guess, in these 2 or 3 years is, I don't want to talk about AI, but AI definitely reduces people's critical thinking, because it's much easier for me to get a slapdash answer via a machine model than me going and actually finding the answer for myself. And it's much easier to go back to that issue on people with mics. It's easier for me to listen to people with mics than go to and find my own information. And so I think all of us here, and yourself, you have a job to do. That job comes from within you. You know, it comes from you taking that initiative. I can't force you to go and read 50 pages. You're going to have to want to do that yourself. So I think it goes back to the mindset and the ideology. Do you meet the university and the institution as an enemy, or do you embrace it? Is it not just another degree that I have to go through? Is it not just another politics lecture that I have to go through? Is this now providing me with an actual opportunity to engage with academics, to engage with knowledge production? Yes, maybe it's not my own knowledge production, but it's still there. The professor has handed it out to me. I'm now making that initiative to decide what I like and what I don't like. So I think it becomes that, and I think it's more so, like I said, a mindset change and a perspective shift more than anything.
I want to quickly change the script, take us to a different section. On Saturday, it's National Women's Day. Happy National Women's Day to every woman in the room and at home. But what interested me when I was doing research for this, I found that, do you know that before the colonizers came, Africa, yes, it had patriarchal connotations, but we had black African queens in place. We had beautiful women, powerful women, like the queens of Ghana, the warrior queens, right? The Igbo society, the ladies that sat on those councils, right, in Nigeria. And all these people, in a way, we tend to forget them nowadays. Because the colonizers came in and they taught us this idea that, okay, patriarchy should be emphasized. Patriarchy is the rule of the day, on and on and on. I won't get into that. But the reason I'm bringing this in is because I wanted to pose a question to everyone here. Do you think that today, the exercise of power in Africa is still gendered? And if so, is that a product of colonization, or was this just inherent in Africa? What do you think?
So I think I'd start off by saying that gender is central to how power and equality manifests itself. So when I think about justice, for instance, and I think about gendered violence and gendered harms, I often think that this notion of, if anyone's familiar, transitional justice, it has actually historically marginalized what we know as gendered harms. And I often think what Vino mentioned earlier about the structures, and we think about politicized spaces, how we should address those authoritative structures. When we think about gender, and especially when we study it, when we engage with it, we should actually think about how are these gender inequalities entrenched, and how is it entrenched by the governments at play. So when I often think about it, I often think about women and how they are represented in politics. And for me, women are underrepresented in politics. And I often think, how can we change that? So, and when I first think about it, I always think about how does violence play a role in the representation of women in politics? And that's something that's still like ongoing, and it's not something that I have an answer to now. But I think it's thinking about these things at a start of a conversation that we should have, especially with National Women's Day coming up.
So, on Anastasia's point, I think in terms of the gender, I think it is definitely a product of the colonial project, and I think it's something that was just re-entrenched as we went on, when it was the liberation movements fighting for freedom. It was traditionally thought that the men are the ones fighting, and the females are the one who are supposed to traditionally be fulfilling the roles what a female should be doing. And just as we went on to gaining freedom, and in most African countries we see that in terms of the executives, it's mostly female. Sorry, it's mostly men who are in power, and here and there the odd foreign female is there. So how do we change that? And I know there's countries who are talking about gender equality, and political movements talking about it as well, but what is actually being done?
So, yes, I do believe that the exercise of power is gendered within Africa as a whole currently. And this is particularly due to colonization, and this is due to our current religious institutions. It is also due to customary law and traditional leadership, which is built upon the foundations of apartheid, and of course our current patriarchal foundation of society. And I just want to focus a little bit on customary law, because politics and law are integrated very much so, where politics informs law and law informs politics as well. So it's an interchangeable relationship. And when I say that it is still gendered in the continent of Africa as a whole, it's mainly because we're still in male-centered hierarchies that are, and normally in state politics, women are viewed as tokens, as a performative form of gendered diversity. And specifically here in South Africa, like in customary law, there's a thing called male primogeniture, sorry if I say that wrong, which is essentially focusing on male inheritance, and it's the exclusion of women inheritance. And only in 2005, in a constitutional court case, I'm just going to call it the Behe case, declared male primogeniture as unconstitutional because it wasn't following the principles of the Bill of Rights. And this only happened in 2005. And one can argue that our democracy was still changing from the systems of apartheid and still discovering itself during that time. But the thing is that 2005 was just the other day ago. And if we still have those systems being changed legally and including politically, of course our society is still going to be very much so gendered. So even though the law may change, the mindsets and the generations, the mindset of the generations, etc., it will take significantly longer, because beliefs as a whole changes per generation. It doesn't happen overnight, all at once. And overall, this shows that we have a lot of work to do in this space. Of course, we have made things better, and we have made strides to increase the diversity of women in these spaces, but we still have a lot more work to do. And I just want to quickly just answer or give my point of view with regards, is this a cultural norm in our continent? It is not. It is not at all. It's in existence in Western societies, and it's existence in America. It is in existence in other colonized, former colonized spaces. And just talking about the United States for a moment, the United States is going under a war against women at the moment, with the reversal of Roe versus Wade, which is essentially allowing legalizing abortions in the country. And in this sense, when you control women's bodies, you are also controlling their futures as well, controlling the way that they express themselves in public society. And even though this is just one example out of many, it's the main example that's happening in the United States. And it's once again trying to reclaim women back into this place of the kitchen, of the home, the homemakers. And this is why we have a lot of Christian nationalists, especially in the Republican Party, wanting more women to come
They want them out of the public space. They want to control their bodies as a whole, because when their bodies are being controlled, they cannot input into society.
This is when I want to open it up, because while I was getting the amazing input by Olivia, a hand shot up from the radio station. So I want to find out what's happening over there.
Hi. One of the things I wanted to kind of bring to your attention in terms of the way Africa has been written about and historicized as being intrinsically misogynistic has been proven to be unfalse. In a lot of the works and a lot of the scholarship that I am interacting with in this semester is Afrocentric, is African studies, and in the African studies readings, or the African feminist studies readings, there were cases where America and continental Africa, or I think South Africa, leveled each other in terms of femicide, in terms of domestic violence cases in the home. But in Africa and the continent, as well as North Africa and West Asia, so what we would call the Middle East, those cultures have been written about where violence against women is intrinsic, is the default. When in America, it's a fluke. When we look at statistics, they are level. And I think one of the things I do want to caution about the cases with tribal law, it is a very big cultural issue in South Africa, especially when we as a government, post-apartheid, try and regulate the goings-on of cultural institutions. So male circumcision rituals, for example, have been problematized in the way that they are run, but I think it is a very big overstretch for government to try and regulate it that takes us back to apartheid, where we are restricted from practicing our culture. We need to question, how has our culture changed? Aspects of our culture has been bastardized, butchered, and repackaged to us as Africans as being normal, as being the way it's always been when it's not. The exclusion of women from power structures in politics, for example, is new, is a result from colonialism. The rampant persecution and exclusion of gay people from society, so homophobia, transphobia, the othering of queer identities, is a new concept post-colonization, because queerness was a little bit more, I mean not a little bit, it was more regular, and it wasn't queer, it was standard, if we may say. There are many cultures across the continent and the world where third or alternate genders are acceptable.
We have another hand in the back that's been very patiently waiting. Would you mind coming here?
Hi, what I want to speak about is from the previous topic. I know we talk about like gender. I just have a quick question. So, in terms of like academia and decolonization of knowledge, how do we create like a culture of accountability in face of freedom of speech, which is such a fundamental constitutional principle that obviously gives power to how we spread knowledge? Like where, it's almost difficult to draw the fine line, because it comes back to, okay, who holds that monopoly of knowledge, which we've been discussing throughout this whole session. So that was my question. And another thing that I quickly want to speak about, like pause there, was I think about when we spoke about traditional careers and like how a lot of black families push traditional stable careers. Careers that are typically scientific, like medicine, engineering, and I feel like they hinder, to some extent, critical thinking as to how we think about it, like challenging the status quo as how humanity and creative courses do. And when you look back in history, especially like authoritarian regimes, autocratic regimes, the people that the state are most afraid of are typically the poets, the writers, the artists, especially those that have so much influence. they're the first to be killed, they're the first to be exiled, they're the first to be censored. So yeah, I do say there is definitely some power in humanity and creative subjects. Yeah, because a lot of them probably, yeah, like their background comes from these type of, fields. So that's all I wanted to say. Yeah, that was my question. So whatever, yeah.
Thank you. Do you still want to come?
For me, my opinion on is power gendered in Africa, I feel like is complicated considering the fact that we're using very Eurocentric ideas to describe something in Africa. For example, what is power? As a Zulu woman, I understand traditionally I hold power within the household because when it comes to lobol, it's not necessarily like you're buying someone, you are an asset to your family, and that is why they're exchanging you for money, for cows, for whatever it is that they choose as a worthy form. That's why there's these negotiations, is because you're meant to be raised in a way that it's not just making your family proud, but being an asset, making sure that, okay, even if you don't get married, you still are able to stand for yourself. You're still able to help this family. And by exchanging you, you're now going to help that family. And a lot, if you look at it in a very European sense, it's, well, now you're in the kitchen, you're not in the workplace. And, now that's taking away your power. But I feel like in trying to say power, what are we defining? Are we saying that power is equal to control? Are we saying that power is equal to how big of a change that you can make? Because as we were saying earlier, even if you post on social media and only get 2 views, is that not still power? Is that not still power to influence? And for that reason, I feel like it's very complex in the sense that we might not be using the right language because we might not be defining things in a very appropriate way. And for that reason, it'll always be a complex topic, even with education. Why is the humanities a bad degree? I feel like you're uneducated in the humanities because I've learned in being part of the humanities that in linguistics you can go into sociolinguistics. Is something I didn't know. I just thought, oh, you had to be a linguist. If you're not a linguist, then you're never going to find work. But there's intersections, and it's this misunderstanding and this way that we say, well, if you can't use your degree as it is outside of university, then it's useless. And I feel like this notion of we're using the wrong language consistently just because of how words are defined. Some words in English don't exist in other languages. Some words in other languages don't exist in English. Because I also feel like we have this almost romanticized view of what Africa was before colonization, with saying that, oh, well, women were leaders. That's true, but in the Zulu culture, even if we had not been colonized, you wouldn't see a woman chief just because that is how we are structured. And a lot of people complain that, well, Zulu men are allowed to marry so many women. How come women aren't allowed to marry so many men? When it goes into culture, it goes into the fact that now you belong to several different families. Your child can't have your surname. That's just law in the Zulu culture. And so now, whose surname? Your children aren't related, like, at all. When they ask you, what is your clan name? They're going to say one clan name. They turn to your other child, what's your clan name? It's a completely different clan name. They're not recognized in Zulu law as your children, whereas in European law, they will be because the birth certificate has the same mother. And so now, obviously now they're related. And I feel like in all of these complexities, in the way that we are discussing it, yes, it is helpful, but we also have to realize where there are speed bumps in the fact that we use power. And my definition of power might be different from your definition of power. We then say Africa as a whole, but then Africa has tribes, it has clans, because even within Zulu people, we don't have the same agreement of how we're meant to be using language, how pronunciation is, what is tradition, what isn't tradition, what is culture, what isn't culture, and that makes it complicated in such different ways.
Thank you. Do you still have a question? I have that hand, and then I think that'll be our last hand.
Okay, I mean, I had a lot to say earlier, but I'll first start with identity politics, especially in decolonial conversation and decolonial thought. We need to acknowledge the fact that gender and also race are ideas that are rooted in Euro-American colonial ideas. And I feel like it's very important to bring up these aspects when we're talking about political discourse, especially in the context of South Africa and also with power. The second point that I wanted to make was the foundations of the political spaces in South Africa and just South Africa as a whole are all based, again, in colonial mindsets, frameworks, even the political terms that we use, and politics as a science is very based, it's based in Euro-American logic. And when we're having conversations about decolonizing education, how do we move through that? Because we're using Euro-American logics to dissect ideas that are rooted in that. And in a way, we're perpetuating this idea of European supremacy in thought and ideas, and also in education. And again, linking back to decolonial thought, how do we go about dissecting these ideas when most of the political frameworks that we know today and that we learn in university are based in European thinking? Is that even possible? Are we able to find our own ways of thinking and maybe link back to African indigenous knowledge that existed before colonialism? And how much effort do you think that would take? Because, I mean, colonization did a really good job at erasing the histories that existed before. So how do we go about that?
Comment and then I'll hand it back to the panel.
Can you hear me? Okay, cool. I've got two questions. I'll try to keep them brief. The first is, I'm a psychology student, and some of the papers we've been looking at now discuss the role that psychology has played in South Africa, looking back at apartheid, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the role psychology plays within the political sphere today. Is it positive, negative, and what's it doing? Because I'm not in politics, I don't really have a full grasp of that. And then the second is, back to Prof, you spoke about the difficulties faced by people trying to publish, particularly ideas that are less popular or even frowned upon nowadays. And you'll get kind of silenced by your publishers, or in the peer review process you'll be cut down. What do you see as a potential upshot or a way forward? I found it rather demotivating thinking about my academic future and publishing and research. I've had some ideas that I've spoken to lecturers about, and they've been like, well, you probably won't get funded for that. No one's going to fund that type of research. Now South Africa is moving towards black empowerment and so on. And a lot of those ideas, it's taken a long time for research to be done supporting that because of funding and so on. So what are your thoughts on a possible upshot or way forward? Yeah.
So I got a lot of amazing questions from you guys, which I was trying to answer every single one, but in fear that we're running out of time, what we're going to do for this segment, I'm going to just run it speaker by speaker, and each person is going to have a chance to address a question that they most resonated with, a question that they feel like they can best do it justice, right? And I think for me, the one that interested me the most was when the lady over there asked, what is power? Like literally, we've been speaking about power for 2 hours, but we haven't come to a substantial definition in a way. And for me, what ruminated was this idea that power is you, power is me, power is every single act that you do on a day-to-day basis. It might seem insignificant in the long run because you are overpowered by this machine, this leviathan, this beast, but in a way, you'd be surprised how far it goes. And especially in the South African context, where I believe that we're riddled and tormented by the past of apartheid, right? I believe that slight changes, how you speak, how you carry yourself, how you might just address yourself around other people, that might go a long way in actually combating capitalism. That was at least my takeaway. So maybe from Prof's end, you can address the question that resonated the most with you tonight.
Fantastic questions. Hugely insightful and valuable. And I wish I could stitch them all together, but I think I can try to bring two things together which really struck me. The one, and I think it was mentioned more than one time, but you got the ball rolling with why am I teaching politics, and can I persuade students to see it as a vehicle to get them into some kind of meaningful role. You know, I'm not saying earning a lot of money, but some kind of meaningful role that they're going to play in their future. And how can I outcompete much more structured and competitive programs like law or accounting or other academic programs that are really packaged in a vocational, professionally specific way. It's a hard sell to make, but I think it's already been said about the sort of intangible value of critical thinking, that it also intersects with what you said about policy, about, you know, so many of our students who are doing this major with another major who know that they're not going to complete a degree that's going to give them a prepackaged job, end up doing hugely meaningful work. Over the years, I'm interacting more and more with former students who are doing incredible work in the policy space, even though the NSC system doesn't really prepare you for that, because you get a whole lot of history, but not much here and now problem solving, policy specific work, which you know, our students go, you know, most of our students don't go work in government. I wish they would because they'd be an asset, but they're going, you know, they are the next, you know, they're doing sort of change making work in, whether it's an NGO, an advocacy group, even a private company. They're trained to be able to critically understand the machine which we teach them about in class, and how to change things on the ground. So, so it can happen. The road to get there is meandering. It's not clear, but I think you know, a politics education can allow you to do meaningful things that you may not even know you wanted to do.
All right. I think trying to answer my sister's question when he was talking about how can we perhaps decolonize the ideas that are currently dominant. I think decolonization, it imbued those who are concerned with it with a double burden, because for you to be able to debunk something doesn't exist, you need first to be aware of the lies, and then you bring it back into Africa, and then you present how things were in the past, but also in doing so not to be romanticizing the past as if back in the past in African continent everything was beautiful. Africa was this much more egalitarian society. There was no patriarchy. Yes, patriarchy was there, but not as much as the colonial discourse has portrayed it to be, as this hyper masculine society. There was it was not like it is presented as back in the past. And then on the idea of customary law, I think that is also a lie that has been made to be true. There's no such a thing called African customary law. Africans are not homogeneous people because at the first failure, at the entrance of it, customary law assumes that Africans were having these homogeneous practices and so forth, and then the idea again of inheritance, that it was largely benefiting male, but it was largely benefiting the firstborn male, not equally benefiting all the males. If you were firstborn male, you were entrusted with the inheritance of the family, and then those who come after you in certain cultures, for instance in KwaZulu where I come from, they have to work harder than the firstborn because the firstborn inherit the household or the homestead, others need to build theirs. So it was also not an idea of it was largely benefiting all males.
I want to essentially talk about your question, and it's just simply talking about essentially decolonizing this European thinking and dissecting it. And where do we go from here? And I feel that as a whole in the future, we can't just rely on just African ideologies and or just Eurocentric thinking. We have to have a combination of the two of them. We can't just put them into little holes and we're just going to say we're going to be going with this one because the other one has the history of colonization, etc. But the thing is that our society, our system currently is built on those Eurocentric theories and ideologies. So we can't just ignore it and throw it out the door, essentially. We have to analyze them, okay, look at, see where they are being damaging to our society, to our way of thinking, our way of life, and expanding upon that. Maybe adding more into African ideology or other perspectives that have been essentially just covered up compared to Eurocentric thinking. So I think that is where our future lies, into the combination of the two, rather than just focusing on the one, because that is essentially how our society grows. Our society does not grow of just being singular in nature.
Guys, I had so much fun. Sadly, time is not in this room with us trying to have this conversation with us. It's just telling us to wrap things up. But I guess what's more important is that I hope that in this conversation, which I like to think it was, each and every one of us came out with something, that you learned something that contributed to maybe how you view power differently tomorrow and whatever day comes, you know what I mean? Because that's what was entirely the goal of the panel, to essentially deliberate and discuss this idea of power and how it plays out in politicized spaces and how we can make a change in our everyday practices. So yeah, that's all you get from us for now. But I would like to call upon our president so that we can just close things up and wrap it up, and so that you guys go home and relax. Yeah, thank you very much, by the way.
Thank you guys so much for coming through and really engaging with our amazing panel. It really means so much. If you don't know, we're currently in the monitoring phase, so we're really trying to just show the purpose of the society as well, and the fact that we had such an amazing turnout shows that there really is support for us, and we really, really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much. And we just want to really thank our panel and give you guys a little something special because, as you know, today's been a day. So having you guys pitch up and really engage with the students as well has just really made this really meaningful for us as well. And I'm sure you can see with how interested people were in getting the chance to talk to you that this is something that has the potential to be very long lasting here at UCT. So thank you so much. And first person, Prof. Naidu. Thank you so much. Just a little something. And then here we go. Just a little something. We're all going to do like a little giving, I think, to the people that you were allocated to. But yeah, so thank you so much. And yeah, this is basically the end of this event, but we have a special announcement for our next event that we're hosting at a soapbox. So this is something where you guys like are driving forward your time to really get on that little box and say what you want to say. So I hope you guys look forward to that. It's in 2 weeks' time. We will be posting an announcement. Hopefully you follow our social media. It's UCT Pol Soc, TikTok, Instagram. Just follow us. And we also have a WhatsApp group. So if you aren't on the group, we'll have someone at the end that has like the QR code if you want to scan it on your way out as well. So thank you very much. Really, a hands up to our panel. Thank you so much.
I suppose that's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, have a good night. Yeah.